Welcome to the Studio African Utility Week. I'm Rose Bundock and I'm joined now by Ivan Barron, Chief Technology Officer, EDMI.
Very good to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. You obviously have a lot of expertise within the Australian, New Zealand, Asia Pacific region. Just wondering if you can comment on the general landscape of smart metering in those regions at the moment.
There's obviously a lot of activity. We've done a lot of work in New Zealand, a large rollout there with GPRS. It's been going very well. It's progressing now to the point where the customer is seeing what else they can do with that system. It's been in the field for a number of years, and it's like, okay, we can now add services onto that. The Australian market is evolving. They're recently bringing in a new way of selling electricity, really, in terms of power of choice. So the idea of that will be the consumer has the choice of what sort of meter that they want. You need to have a basic level of functionality. Okay, we need a disconnect relay, we need to be able to measure this, but beyond that, there's avenues for utility or a retailer to sell, okay, well, we can upsell you on these additional functions that will help you. So it's driven by the consumer rather than driven by the utility deciding what the customer should have.
How do you think that would work in practice? Do you think the consumer understands enough about functionality to be able to decide what they need?
Well, obviously it's quite new in terms of bringing it in. I'm not sure if anyone else has really done a similar sort of approach. But obviously the retailers and so on will be there to sell a particular package and sell a particular option like any sort of commercial product.
Right, and how do energy companies feel about that?
I think it's seen as a big move. There's a difference in terms of between the distribution companies and the retailers, the network companies, about who should be driving it, how the rollout happens, that type of thing. But where we are now, it has changed in terms of it's now driven effectively by the consumer and the retailers far more than the network companies. Though they're still trying to get, well, how can we then take information that we can then sell to the network companies and still give those benefits to the network companies, even though the network companies aren't owning the asset.
And what about the kind of switching times? Is that regulated as the minimum amount of time that consumers
I think
can
they're
switch?
still getting into the details of that. I mean, the UK has focused on very fast switching times.
Yeah.
So it's like we want to be able to switch every day of the year, 365 days if you want to.
Yes.
And a lot of the system has been focused around that. In general, of course, no one is going to do that, or very unlikely to do that. That can affect, I guess, how a retailer packages products. Same as in the mobile phone industry, you have it's cheap calling at this time of day or this time of day. And they take that and package it all up and then turn it into the real cost of the airtime or the electricity, trying to get that perfect sort of solution and package that benefits the consumer and also makes money.
And what about in the communication protocol space in Australia? What are you seeing there?
In Australia, probably protocols is been not so much focused on standards, more around getting the data. So in terms of the main thing you want to get out of the meter is a set of data, and you want to get that in the best way possible. So they aren't specifying any sort of particular protocols in delivering that, but they're just saying, well, we want this piece of information and we want it this often. So you can sort out how you're going to do that and how you're going to make sure you can work with different products and so on, but in the end it's the data that's important.
And have there been any major problems with connectivity?
Not really. I mean, moving from a system of historically systems like the Itron's MB90 system that goes back decades to newer systems. We have our own head ends, then bringing out a new sort of cloud head end in terms of really allowing scalability in terms of that. And a lot of that is coming into, well, what systems does it plug into in the back end? Not just plugging into the meter, because in the end, you can write a driver or so on to talk to a different meter. DLMS, for instance, does have a lot of variations, and it does take a concerted effort in a country to develop the particular reference case for that country and what seats that country's need. So all those things need to be solved, and it hasn't really stopped the industry. And there's been a lot of innovation and so on historically in that. Go back to the very old protocols like 1107, which is a text-based protocol, and that ended up conflicting with the requirements of the utilities, where they wanted to read in 30 seconds, and you couldn't get the data that quickly. So everyone adapted in terms of, okay, we need a faster protocol to deliver what the customer needs, because in the end it's about delivering data. And spreading that data around and getting it to the people who need it and doing the analytics and so on that.
How many endpoints are in the field in Australia, would you say, connected?
Australia's the main actual smart meter in terms of connected meter rollout has been done in Victoria. It probably suffered a little bit in terms of the promotion of it when it came out. The government perhaps didn't really do as big a promotion job as it should have in terms of it had the ball in terms of doing that. And there was a bit of a kickback, I guess, from the customer base in terms of that, because there wasn't an education there in terms of, well, what are you doing? What do these changes mean for me? So a lot of the rest of the industry in Australia has stood back a little. Still a lot of work going on in commercial and industrial metering and that sort of space, and people doing projects just because they make sense there. But in terms of a government, you will do it now. That hasn't really happened until now with the sort of power of choice changes.
Okay, so under the power of choice, you must have a smart meter, but you're allowed to choose it.
There is a certain base level of functionality that's being specified.
But you, as a consumer, you must have one, or the utility must require one, or it hasn't quite got to that?
I'm not exactly sure. It's all been very new at the moment. There are a set of regulations in that in terms of what the opt-out clauses and so on are and what the penalties are. I'm not quite sure on that.
So it'll be an interesting case study to follow, actually, to see how that kind of evolves. Would other countries look to adopt that
there's a lot of discussion at the moment around the specific rules and the different parties coming in now. The rules have been released and going, okay, well, we think it should be like this, and so on. So it's going through that process, it's a democratic process.
And then moving to Asia, where obviously EDMI is based in, headquartered in Singapore. What trends are you seeing in metering there? Is it smart prepaid? Is it AMR still?
Everyone has their own solutions. There's a lot of focus in terms of AMR in terms of the high-end customers, because they give you your biggest benefit. We've done some big projects in Thailand with very aggressive read schedules. So this is on larger customers, but they read the meters every 15 minutes. And that lets them do things like, if they see something untoward happening, they can send a truck out there basically within an hour to do something about it, rather than waiting for a monthly read or something like that.
Right, and what would be the penalty? Do you know?
It goes through a set of legal proceedings. I'm not sure in terms of the exact penalties, but it is something they vigorously pursue. That's protecting the revenue is something that they see as being a very important part of their business.
Is it a cultural thing? I mean, is it a large-scale problem in Asia?
I wouldn't say it's a large-scale problem. I wouldn't say it's not a problem. But it certainly is a focus in terms of minimising avenues for tamper, because in the end you want to have a fair system so that everyone pays what they should be paying. In the end, metering just splits up. Somewhere you generate it, it costs money to do that. You distribute it, you have to split it up evenly into, well, how much should you pay for your share of generating it in the plant. So
Yeah.
You want everyone to play fair so that you can afford to buy those generation and distribution systems.
And how ready are markets like Vietnam, Philippines, for those larger scale rollouts? Or are they're up and running already?
The focus has been on the commercial and industrial level, as I say, that's the largest benefit there. Most of the countries in the region are looking for new opportunities, larger rollouts, doing the cost benefit. What is it that will make sense for our country? Every country is different. There's different ways a network is constructed. There's different cultures. There's different ways houses are constructed, which affect communications, the type of meter, the type of ways it's installed. So every country is different in that respect.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the metering communication element module, do you use a variety of protocols?
We do use a variety. We haven't, if we'd found the perfect one that worked everywhere, it would be great. We do a lot of GPRS and 3G. We found that works very well. The New Zealand rollout is something like 800,000 plus meters on that system. And part of the success there is working very closely with the telco as well in terms of coming up with a system and a way of packaging the data that worked for everyone involved. But we've also done work with mesh radio systems, PLC systems.
Within the same rollouts? Or would they tend to be separate?
It tends to be separate. Usually you end up with an infill even of different technologies. So you may require some GPRS or 3G just to fill in a gap. And we see everyone has a different approach. In the UK, we're doing the Communications Hub project with that. So that is 10 million sites in terms of a long-range radio system. And that works well for the UK.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you're familiar with what they're doing in Japan. They're looking at like a sort of looking at using 3 types within the same rollout. So PLC, cellular.
You have different areas. I mean, your urban areas, I think they're looking more at PLC.
Exactly.
Very regional areas is sort of GPRS or 3G and so on. And then in the middle, mesh radio sort of solutions.
So what would be, as a CTO, what's your opinion of that approach? Do you feel it's overly complex?
I don't necessarily think it's overly complex. A lot of it is about optimizing your solution. It comes down to the costs, the type of building construction. Like if you have a building made of concrete and steel versus wood construction, you're going to favour PLC maybe because it can get around a metal infrastructure, or RF works very well because it's just wood and it can punch through that. So there are different solutions. We've found that often, you just need that mix. Often you can get one solution that will deal with a large portion of a country. But in the end, people want to read 100% of the meters. It's not 95, I want 98%. In the end, you do want to read all of them. Otherwise, how do you give those people a bill?
Yeah.
How do you cover the costs? So.
What about in your own research department? What kind of things are you looking at? What trends are you seeing?
There's a lot of bringing down, I guess, a lot of our history is in commercial and industrial space, and we're seeing a lot of that functionality and features that we've typically offered in that higher end space now coming down into the residential market. So people want that similar level of capability, aspects like security, load control functionality, monitoring different situations in the power system. There's a case to say, well, if someone's delivering you power, what quality of power is that? Is it at the right frequency? Is it the right voltage? Am I getting it 24 hours a day? Is it causing damage to my equipment? Well, that can be, sensitive data in a way in terms of the utility, who owns that data and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But it's useful to a utility as well to make sure that the product that they are delivering is a high quality product.
You gave a talk today on getting the most from your smart meter, and we're talking about obviously about the data collection and using that data for benefits both for utility and customer. Do you see that happening out in the field? Are people really getting the benefit?
We do. I think basic thing when you first do a rollout, what we've seen is it's basic readings. Okay, I'm getting watt hours, I'm getting bar hours, I can bill off that. That's my core thing. But then once you've cracked that original nut and all your systems are ticking along, then you start looking at, okay, well, what else can I get out of this system? And start moving on to some of the other functionalities. Okay, sag swell data to look at, well, what's the quality of my power system? Where are my voltages running? Basic information like average voltage, min-max voltage. Power companies can start to use that or sell that data onto network companies to sort of go, okay, well, you need to put an extra transformer in here because we're getting sags down the end of the line. So rather than waiting for customers to complain, they can proactively go, okay, well, we've got a situation here. We need to prioritise that in our maintenance or capital budget and solve that issue. So it is a growing thing. We've seen rolling out things like ripple control, which in a lot of smart grid is seen as old technology, but a number of utilities have it. They bought it. It still works. It does the purpose. So we add ripple functionality to the meter, so we can then add, interact with that system and do more than perhaps a normal ripple relay can do, and opens up new opportunities for tariffs and energy management and that demand management, which is sort of key if you're starting to hit the limits of your distribution system. Renewable energy has its own ups and downs in that if the sun doesn't shine, you don't get power.
Yeah,
so that has its effects on managing demand as well. Fortunately, in places, if you look at somewhere like Australia, the main load would be air conditioning load. So when the sun is shining during the day, that's when you probably have your main load due to air conditioning.
Yeah.
If you look at a colder climate, then you've got a heating load that's going to peak during the evening, not during the day. So you have this offset. How do you store the energy? Europe are looking at, okay, well, we can store energy here. Norway, they've got great dams and so on. We can pump energy there, then pull it back. We've got wind over here. We've got nuclear over here. Putting all that together. It's quite fascinating in terms of the scale and breadth of what's happening.
Thank you, Ivan. We're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. That's all for now from the studio, African Utility Week.